The phone vibrated against my desk, my mother's name flashing across the screen like a warning sign. I let it ring 4 times before answering, each ring matching the rapid beating of my heart. "Bailey, darling!" Her voice dripped with the same sugary sweetness she'd always used when she wanted something. "Your father and I have wonderful news. We're coming to visit this weekend." My stomach dropped. I'm Bailey Wade, and at 32, I'd built a life precisely calculated to keep my parents at arm's length. The success of my wellness retreat business meant I could afford a beautiful home in Vermont, far from their Florida residence. Distance had been my greatest ally. This weekend, I gripped my pen tighter, watching as my carefully organized schedule for the next few days seemed to crumble before my eyes. "Mom, I have 3 retreat openings to oversee." "Oh, surely you can spare time for your parents. We haven't seen your new house yet, and you know how much your father hates FaceTime." I closed my eyes, remembering the last time they'd visited, 5 years ago. They'd stayed for 2 weeks, burned through my groceries, maxed out my credit card, and left without so much as a thank you. "Fine," I said, already regretting it. "But I can only spare Saturday afternoon." "Perfect. We'll be there Friday night." Before I could protest, she hung up. I immediately dialed my sister Hadley. "They're coming," I said when she answered. "Shit." The sound of her coffee shop's espresso machine whirred in the background. "Both of them?" "Yeah, this weekend. And I have a feeling it's not just a social call. Want me to come over? I can bring reinforcements." By reinforcements, she meant wine. "Please, Friday night. They'll be here around 7. After hanging up, I walked through my house. My sanctuary. Every piece of furniture, every artwork on the walls I'd earned through years of hard work. Starting with nothing but determination and a loan from my mentor Valeria, I'd built serenity retreats from the ground up. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Dwayne. "Hey, beautiful, still on for dinner?" His voice instantly calmed my nerves. "Rain check? My parents just announced they're visiting this weekend." "The famous Wade parents? Want me to come over for moral support?" I considered it. "Maybe Saturday? I'd rather not subject you to the full experience just yet." "You know," he said, his voice gentle, "most people don't need to fortify themselves against their parents' visits. Most people didn't spend their childhood being their parents' personal ATM." I replied, walking to my home office window. Outside, the Vermont mountains stretched toward the horizon, my daily reminder of how far I'd come from the trailer park where I grew up. I started working at 12, I continued, the memories flooding back. Paper route, babysitting, anything to help pay their bills. By 16, I was working full-time after school at the diner. They took every penny, claiming it was my duty to support the family while they pursued their dreams. And now you own 5 successful wellness retreats. Karma's funny that way. Yeah, well, karma's about to ring my doorbell on Friday night. After we hung up, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting to the past. To the college fund that disappeared into my father's failed music career. To my mother's pyramid scheme, ventures that I'd financially supported. To all the times I'd gone hungry so my younger sisters could eat. My phone lit up with a text from Chloe, my youngest sister. "Hadley told me about Mom and Dad. Want me to accidentally schedule their room at the retreat instead of your house?" I smiled despite myself. My sisters had escaped the worst of our parents' financial abuse, largely because I'd shielded them. Now they were my strongest allies. The rest of the week passed too quickly. Before I knew it, Friday evening arrived, bringing with it the sound of tires on my gravel driveway. I watched from my window as their rental car pulled up. A luxury model, of course. Some things never changed. Hadley arrived moments later, carrying 2 bottles of wine and wearing her game face. "Ready for this?" "As I'll ever be." I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders. The doorbell rang, and through the frosted glass, I could see their silhouettes. My father's stance was confident, entitled. My mother bounced on her heels like an excited child. "Remember," Hadley whispered, "you're not that scared kid anymore. This is your house, your life, your rules." I nodded, reached for the door handle, and prepared to face the people who'd taught me my first lessons about survival, lessons I'd never wanted to learn. Bailey Bear! My mother rushed forward, enveloping me in a cloud of expensive perfume. Behind her, my father strode in like he owned the place, wheeling their designer luggage across my hardwood floors. Beautiful home, sweetie, he said, but his eyes weren't warm. They were calculating, scanning every surface like an appraiser. Must have cost a fortune. Would anyone like wine? Hadley intervened, already pouring generous glasses. Oh, Hadley's here too. Mom's smile tightened slightly. She'd always preferred dealing with us separately. Divide and conquer was her specialty. We moved to the living room, where my parents claimed the largest couch. Mom pulled out a folder from her designer bag, setting it on the coffee table. My stomach clenched at the sight. So? Dad cleared his throat. We've been thinking about retirement. Both of you? I couldn't help the sarcasm. Neither of them had held a steady job in decades. Don't be smart, Bailey, Mom chided. Your father's music career could still take off, but we need to be practical about our golden years. Hadley snorted into her wineglass. I shot her a warning look. We've been looking at options, Dad continued, pulling papers from the folder. But everything in Florida is so expensive now. Then your mother had a brilliant idea. This house, Mom gestured around, is far too big for just you. And with all your retreats, you're barely here anyway. The room went silent. Even the ice in our glasses seemed to stop clinking. What exactly are you suggesting? My voice came out steadier than I felt. We want to live here, Dad said plainly. You can stay too, of course. It'll be like old times, one big happy family. Hadley choked on her wine. You can't be serious. Actually, Mom pulled out more papers. We've already spoken to a lawyer. Since Bailey's success came from our early investment in her education. Investment? I stood up so quickly my wine sloshed. You mean the money I earned working doubles at the diner while you bought timeshares? Now, Bailey. Dad's voice took on that patronizing tone I remembered from childhood. We sacrificed everything for you girls. Sacrificed? Hadley jumped in. Bailey paid our mortgage when she was 17. She bought my school supplies, my clothes, my... That's what family does, Mom interrupted. And now it's time for Bailey to help family again. The lawyer says we have a strong case for partial ownership, given our contributions to her early career. My hands shook as I picked up their legal documents. You're suing me for my house? Only if necessary, darling. Mom smiled sweetly. We'd prefer to handle this as family. The room spun slightly. I felt Hadley's hand on my arm, steadying me. Get out, I whispered. Bailey! Dad stood, towering over me like he used to when I was small. Don't be difficult. We're your parents. We have rights. Rights? My voice rose. Like my right to a childhood? My right to go to college instead of supporting your schemes? Those rights? Everything we did was for this family. Mom's voice cracked theatrically. No, I stepped closer. Everything I did was for this family. Everything you did was for yourselves. We'll give you time to think about it. Dad gathered their papers. Our lawyer will be in touch Monday if we don't hear from you. They left their wine glasses empty on my coffee table, no coasters, of course, and showed themselves out. The door hadn't even closed before my legs gave out. Hadley caught me, guiding me to the couch. I'm calling Chloe and Dwayne. They're going to take everything, I whispered. Again. Like hell they are. Hadley was already dialing. Remember my friend from law school? The one who specializes in family law? We're calling her right now. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Sleep on it, sweetie. Family should stick together. I think I'm going to be sick, I muttered. No. Hadley grabbed my shoulders. You're going to be angry. You're going to fight. And this time, you're going to win. She was right. The nausea in my stomach was rapidly turning to rage. I'd spent my entire adult life building boundaries, creating success, making something of myself. I'd be damned if I'd let them tear it all down now. Call your lawyer friend, I said, standing up straighter. But first, call Valeria. I think I have an idea. What kind of idea? I walked to my window, looking out at the mountains that had given me strength for so long. They want to live here? Fine. But it'll be on my terms this time. And trust me, they have no idea what they're in for. Hadley's smile turned wicked. Now that sounds like a plan I want to hear. A wellness retreat for difficult clients? Valeria's laugh echoed through my kitchen the next morning. Bailey, that's deliciously evil. I was surrounded by my support system. Valeria, my mentor and first investor. Dwayne, who'd brought breakfast and his unwavering support. And my sisters, both looking more energized than anyone should at 7 a.m. Not evil, I corrected, spreading documents across my kitchen island. Therapeutic. They want to live under my roof? Fine. But my roof extends to all 5 of my retreat locations. And the best part, Chloe chimed in, is that the newest location needs test guests before the official opening. Hadley's lawyer friend, Sarah, joined us via video call, her face serious on my laptop screen. I've reviewed their legal threat. It's weak at best. They're counting on emotional manipulation more than actual law. Classic mom and dad, Hadley muttered. But, Sarah continued, Bailey's counteroffer needs to appear generous on paper. The retreat program should be presented as a gift, not a punishment. Dwayne leaned against the counter, coffee in hand. Won't they just refuse? They can't, I smiled. Not without looking ungrateful, and nothing matters more to them than appearances. Plus, Valeria added, they're broke. Again. My sources in Florida confirmed they're facing eviction. I wasn't surprised. Their pattern hadn't changed in 30 years. Here's what I'm thinking. I pulled out the retreat's program outline. They'll start at the Vermont location, this house, but instead of the main house, they'll stay in the guest quarters we're renovating. The ones with the strict schedule and minimal amenities? Chloe grinned. Exactly. Then they'll graduate to other locations based on their progress. Each site has a specific focus: financial responsibility, relationship building, personal accountability. Everything they've spent their lives avoiding, Hadley finished. Sarah's voice crackled through the laptop. I can draft this as a formal living arrangement contract. They'll have housing, meals, and life enrichment programs in exchange for their participation and dropping any legal claims. Make it ironclad, I said. No loopholes. Already on it. But Bailey, Sarah paused, are you sure you want to have them this involved in your life, even if it's on your terms? The question hit hard. Dwayne squeezed my shoulder as I considered my answer. I need to end this cycle, I finally said. They've spent my whole life taking. Maybe it's time they learned how to give back. So, speaking of giving back, Chloe pulled out her tablet. I've drafted their daily schedule. 6 a.m. meditation, followed by mindfulness journaling. Don't forget the financial literacy workshops, Hadley added, and the mandatory therapy sessions. And the organic cooking classes, Valeria smiled. No more room service or takeout. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Your mother's crying. Is this how you treat family? I showed it to the group. Right on schedule. Hadley rolled her eyes. The Guilt Trip Express has left the station. Send them this. Sarah shared a document. It's the official notice of your counteroffer. They have 48 hours to respond before we proceed with our own legal action. What legal action? Dwayne asked. Oh, I have documentation of every penny they've taken from Bailey since she was 12. Hadley pulled out a thick folder. I've been keeping records for years. Just in case, I stared at my sister, touched by her foresight and protection. Send it, I told Sarah, and then we start preparing the retreat. I'll handle the renovation crew. Chloe stood up. The guest quarters need to be both comfortable enough to be legal and sparse enough to be humbling. I'll draft the wellness programs, Valeria added. Trust me, they won't know what hit them. As everyone sprang into action, Dwayne pulled me aside. You okay? No, I admitted. But I will be. This feels right, you know? Not just revenge, but maybe actually helping them? You're a better person than they deserve. He kissed my forehead. My phone buzzed again. Mom, this time. We're reviewing your offer. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. I hope you're happy. Before I could respond, another text came through. When can we move in? I showed the messages to everyone. The room erupted in triumphant cheers. Let the games begin. Hadley raised her coffee mug in a toast. No, I corrected her, feeling stronger than I had in years. Let the healing begin, whether they like it or not. I looked around at my family, the one I'd chosen, and the sisters who'd stood by me, and felt a surge of certainty. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about breaking a cycle that had controlled us for too long. Sarah, I turned to the laptop, send them the contracts. Tell them they can move in next week. Next week? Chloe's eyes widened. That's so soon, I smiled. No time like the present to start their journey to wellness. After all, isn't that what family is for? The meditation cushions go there, I directed the delivery crew, pointing to the corner of what would be my parents' new living space. And the yoga mats along that wall. Chloe walked in, clipboard in hand, checking off items. Minimal furniture, check. Sustainable bamboo flooring, check. No TV, definitely check. The guest quarters transformation was nearly complete. What was once a luxury suite now resembled a minimalist monastery, with just enough modern amenities to keep it legal. Bailey? Chloe's voice got quiet. Can we talk? We stepped outside onto the small private patio, another feature of their new accommodations. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of approaching winter. I need to apologize, she said, staring at her clipboard. All these years, I never really understood what you did for us, what they made you do. Chloe? No, let me finish. She looked up, eyes glistening. I was going through old photos for the family therapy documentation, and I found one from my high school graduation. You're in the background, wearing your diner uniform. You left right after the ceremony to work a double shift. I remembered that day. I'd been so tired, I could barely stand. That should have been your graduation too, she continued. But you couldn't afford college because of them. Because of us. Hey, I grabbed her shoulders. You and Hadley were never the problem. You were the reason I kept going. A commotion inside interrupted us. We rushed back in to find Mom and Dad had arrived early, 3 days early. Ha! Surprise! Mom's fake cheerfulness filled the room. We thought we'd come help set up our new home. Dad was already rearranging furniture. This meditation corner would work better as an entertainment area once we get our TV installed. No TV, I stated firmly, as per the contract you signed. But surely, the contract you signed, I repeated, pulling out my phone to text Hadley and Sarah, which specified a move-in date of next week. Now, Bailey, Mom approached, arms open for a hug I didn't give. You can't expect us to stay in that horrible motel any longer. We're family. Family respects boundaries, Chloe spoke up, surprising everyone, including herself. And contracts. Dad's face darkened. Since when do you talk to us like that, young lady? Since now. She stood straighter. Since always, actually. You just never listened. My phone buzzed. Hadley was on her way with Sarah. Good. The guest quarters aren't ready, I said calmly. The wellness programs haven't started. The staff isn't prepared. We don't need programs or staff. Dad waved dismissively. Just give us the keys and… No. The word came out stronger than I'd ever said it to them. This isn't a negotiation. Either you follow the program as agreed or the deal's off. Your choice. Mom's eyes welled with tears. Right on cue. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done? Chloe's voice shook. Do you want to see the spreadsheet of everything Bailey's done for us? Because I have it right here. She waved her tablet. I don't like your tone. Dad took a step toward Chloe. I moved between them. Back off, Dad. This isn't your house yet, and it never will be if you can't follow simple rules. Hadley burst in, Sarah right behind her. What's going on? They're early, I said, and redecorating. Sarah pulled out her laptop. That's a breach of contract. Should I begin termination procedures? Now wait just a minute. Dad's voice rose. We have rights. No, Sarah replied coolly. You have a contract, which you're currently violating. Mom collapsed onto one of the meditation cushions, sobbing. Dad paced, running his hands through his thinning hair. Fine, he finally spat. We'll go back to the motel, but this isn't over. You're right, I agreed. It's just beginning. Next week, when you move in properly, you'll start your wellness journey, including anger management, Dad. He opened his mouth to argue, but Mom cut him off. We'll be back next week, properly this time. She stood, straightening her designer blouse. But Bailey, honey, surely we can discuss some modifications to the program. The only thing we'll be discussing is your commitment to change, I replied. That's what this opportunity is about. Take it or leave it. They left, Dad muttering under his breath, Mom sniffling dramatically. As soon as their car pulled away, my legs started shaking. You did it, Chloe hugged me tight. You stood up to them. We did it, I corrected her. Together. Sarah was already typing. I'm adding an addendum about unauthorized early arrival, and we'll need security cameras. They'll be back, Hadley warned. I know, I surveyed the room, already imagining next week's true beginning. But this time, we're ready for them. Chloe picked up her clipboard again. Should we add more meditation cushions? I have a feeling Dad's going to need them. For the first time since this all began, I laughed, really laughed. Add the cushions, and double the anger management sessions. The official move-in day arrived with a new crisis. My phone rang at 5 a.m. It was Valeria. Your father's lawyer just contacted our legal team, she said without preamble. They're claiming the wellness program constitutes elder abuse. I sat up in bed, fully awake. Elder abuse? They're in their early 60s and perfectly healthy. It's a desperate play, Valeria agreed, but we need to handle this carefully. By 7 a.m., my kitchen had become a war room again. Sarah was on video call, surrounded by legal documents on her end. Actually, she said, looking smugger than any lawyer should before coffee, this works in our favor. They just proved they need the program. How so? Dwayne asked, passing out much-needed caffeine. By demonstrating a pattern of manipulative behavior and inability to accept responsibility, Sarah explained. I've already filed a counter-response suggesting that their reaction proves the necessity of the wellness intervention they agreed to. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. The lawyer was your father's idea. You know how he gets. Can't we just talk about this? Don't respond, Hadley warned, reading over my shoulder. Everything goes through Sarah now. Another text came through. We're still coming today. Family should work things out face-to-face. They're not backing down, I showed the group. Good, Valeria smiled. Because neither are we. The first wellness session is still scheduled for 2 p.m. Your father's anger management counselor is ready, and your mother's financial responsibility workshop is prepared. Right on schedule, at 10 a.m., my parents' car pulled into the driveway. This time, they'd brought reinforcements. Their lawyer, a sleazy-looking man in an ill-fitting suit, Ms. Wade. He approached with an outstretched hand I didn't take. Perhaps we could discuss a more conventional living arrangement? The time for discussion was before they signed the contract. Sarah's voice came clearly through my phone's speaker. Your clients agreed to these terms. Their options are to comply or forfeit any claim to residence. Dad's face turned red. Now see here. No, you see here. I cut him off. You have 15 minutes to decide. Either you move in under the agreed terms, starting with today's wellness sessions, or you leave. Permanently. Mom burst into tears. Again. Bailey, we're your parents. Exactly. I stood my ground. And it's time you learned how to be better ones. Their lawyer pulled them aside for a hushed conversation. I could see Dad gesturing angrily while Mom dabbed at her eyes with an expensive-looking handkerchief. Finally, they turned back to us. We'll comply, Dad ground out. Under protest. Noted, Sarah said. Bailey, proceed with check-in. The next hour was a blur of activity. Chloe supervised as they moved their approved belongings into the guest quarters. Hadley conducted the orientation, explaining the daily schedule and rules. Phones are allowed only during designated hours, she explained, holding out a basket. This is ridiculous. Dad clutched his phone. I have business calls. What business? I asked quietly. The music career that never happened? The investment schemes that failed? His face fell, and for the first time, I saw something new in his eyes. Shame. The phones, please, Hadley repeated firmly. Reluctantly, they handed them over. Your first sessions begin in 2 hours, I said. Dad, you're with Dr. Marcus for anger management. Mom, you have Financial Wellness 101 with Ms. Peters. But we always have lunch together, Mom protested. Not anymore, I replied. Mealtimes are structured for optimal wellness engagement. As if on cue, Valeria arrived with their lunch. Simple, healthy portions that looked nothing like their usual rich restaurant meals. What is this? Dad poked at the quinoa bowl. Nutrition is a crucial part of your wellness journey, Valeria explained cheerfully. You'll learn to prepare similar meals in your cooking classes. Cooking classes? Mom looked horrified. But we don't cook. You do now, I said, starting tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. They ate in stunned silence while I reviewed their schedule with Valeria. Every hour was accounted for. Therapy, classes, physical activity, structured social time. This isn't what we imagined, Mom said quietly. I know, I replied. That's the point. Their lawyer left, looking defeated. As the door closed behind him, Dad spoke up. Bailey. His voice was different, smaller somehow. We really don't have a choice, do we? You always have a choice, I met his eyes. But for once, all the choices are mine to give. Welcome to your wellness journey. I left them sitting there, staring at their empty quinoa bowls, and walked back to the main house where my real family waited. My sisters, Dwayne, Valeria. Phase 1 complete, Hadley announced. Now comes the hard part, I said, watching through the window as my parents explored their new, smaller world. Actually helping them change. Ah, if anyone can do it, it's you. Dwayne squeezed my hand. I wasn't so sure, but for the first time in my life, I had all the power. And I intended to use it wisely. I will not do sunrise yoga, Dad's voice echoed across the retreat grounds at 5:45 a.m. I watched from my office window as Valeria, ever patient, stood her ground. The schedule is non-negotiable, Jonathan. Your day begins with yoga and meditation. This is insane, he protested, still in his designer pajamas. I'm 61 years old. Perfect age for developing flexibility, both physical and mental, Valeria replied smoothly. Mom appeared behind him, looking lost without her usual full makeup. John, maybe we should try it. Remember what Dr. Marcus said about trying new things? 3 days into their wellness journey, and the cracks in their facade were starting to show. I picked up my phone to text Hadley. You need to see this, I wrote. Dad's about to do his first downward dog. She replied instantly, recording it? Security cameras got it covered. I watched as Valeria led them through basic poses. Dad's face turned redder with each movement, while Mom kept losing her balance, unused to functioning without her morning mimosa. A knock at my door revealed Chloe with their progress reports. You're going to want to see these, she said, dropping files on my desk. I opened the first one, Dad's anger management assessment. Severe control issues stemming from deep-seated insecurity, I read aloud. Recommends doubled sessions. Mom's is better, Chloe pointed to the second file. Her financial counselor says she showed genuine surprise when presented with the total sum of money she's taken from you over the years. Surprise or remorse? Both, maybe? She cried during the session. Real tears this time, not the usual performance. A commotion outside drew our attention back to the window. Dad had fallen trying to attempt a warrior pose. This is abuse, he shouted from the ground. No, Valeria helped him up. This is growth. Now let's try that pose again. My phone buzzed. Dwayne checking in. How's the morning entertainment? Better than Netflix, I replied. Coming to dinner tonight? Wouldn't miss it. First family dinner under the new regime, right? Right. 6 p.m. sharp in the main dining room. The day unfolded according to schedule. After yoga came breakfast, organic, portion controlled, followed by separate morning sessions. Dad had financial responsibility training, while Mom attended a workshop on emotional manipulation and its impacts. At lunch, I found Mom sitting alone at her designated table, pushing food around her plate. Bailey! She looked up, her face naked without its usual layers of makeup. Could we talk? I sat down, maintaining professional distance. That's what therapy is for. No, I mean really talk. About. She gestured vaguely. Everything. Mom, I saw the spreadsheets, she interrupted. In financial literacy class. Every penny you earned, everything we took. I never added it up before. I stayed silent, watching her face. We told ourselves it was normal, she continued, that children should help their parents. But seeing it all laid out like that, her voice cracked. We stole your childhood, didn't we? Before I could respond, Dad stormed in. Karen, don't talk to her without me present. Actually, I stood up. Unauthorized conversations are against program rules. Mom, you have art therapy in 5 minutes. Dad, Dr. Marcus is waiting. The evening's family dinner was a carefully orchestrated event. Hadley and Chloe arrived early to help set up. Dwayne brought wine. For us, not them. Remember, I briefed everyone, this is their first test. Let's see if 3 days of therapy have made any difference. My parents arrived exactly on time, looking exhausted from their full day of sessions. Before we eat, I announced, the program requires each participant to share one meaningful insight from their day. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Pass. Not an option, Hadley said. Share or no dinner. He sighed heavily. Fine. Dr. Marcus says my anger comes from feeling out of control, and that maybe I've been trying to control others because I never learned to control myself. The table fell silent. None of us had expected actual self-awareness so soon. Mom spoke next, her voice small. I learned that saying I'm your mother isn't an excuse for bad behavior. It's actually the reason I should have behaved better. Chloe dropped her fork. Hadley's mouth fell open. I felt Dwayne squeeze my hand under the table. Well, I managed. That's good insight. The rest of dinner passed in awkward conversation and long silences. As they left for their quarters, Mom turned back. Bailey, thank you for not giving up on us completely. I watched them walk away, leaning into Dwayne's supportive embrace. They're actually trying, Chloe said, amazed. Don't celebrate yet, Hadley warned. Remember, Mom's best performances always came right before her biggest asks. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was the lack of makeup and designer clothes. Maybe it was the exhaustion from actual work. Or maybe, just maybe, the wellness program was doing its job. Tomorrow's another day, I said. Another chance for them to prove if this change is real. 2 weeks into the program, the real breakthrough happened during a mandatory family therapy session. Dr. Marcus sat with all of us, me, my parents, and my sisters, in the retreat's counseling room. Today, he said, we're going to do a role reversal exercise. Parents, you'll hear from your daughter's perspective. Girls, you'll finally speak freely. Dad immediately tensed. We've heard plenty. No, Dr. Marcus cut him off. You've defended plenty. Today, you only listen. I went first, pulling out a worn piece of paper. This is my college acceptance letter to NYU. Full scholarship. Mom's face lit up. But you never told us. Because the day it came, I continued, you had already emptied my bank account for Dad's recording studio equipment. Equipment you sold 2 months later for 1/10 of its value. The room went silent. I couldn't afford the dorm deposit, my voice shook, or books, or the bus ticket to New York. So I tore up the letter and took another shift at the diner. Dad's face had lost all color. Bailey, we didn't know. Hadley's turn, Dr. Marcus intervened. My sister leaned forward. Every Christmas, I watched Bailey wrap presents for Chloe and me. Presents she bought with her own money, while you two were in Cancun or Vegas or wherever. She was 16, playing Santa because our parents were too busy chasing their dreams to care about ours. Mom started crying, but Dr. Marcus held up his hand when she tried to speak. Chloe went last. I used to be proud, telling my friends that my mom was an entrepreneur and my dad was a musician. Then I got older and realized you weren't entrepreneurs or musicians. You were just takers. That's enough. Dad stood up abruptly. We get it. We were terrible parents. Sit down, Jonathan, Dr. Marcus said firmly. The exercise isn't finished. What more do you want? Dad's voice cracked. To hear how we ruined their lives? How we failed? No, I said quietly. We want you to understand why this program isn't punishment. It's your last chance to be actual parents. Mom wiped her eyes, smearing her minimal makeup. We thought we were teaching you independence. You taught us survival, Hadley corrected. Bailey taught us independence. Dr. Marcus pulled out 3 envelopes. Your daughters each wrote you a letter explaining what they need from you going forward. You'll read these in your private sessions tomorrow. I can't. Dad's shoulders slumped. I can't face any more of this. That's the problem. I stood up. You never could face anything. Not bills, not responsibility, not the damage you caused. You ran away to chase dreams while I cleaned up your messes. But you can't run from this program. This time, you have to stay and do the work. Or what? He challenged, a flash of his old self emerging. Or you lose us, Chloe said simply. All of us. Forever. The threat hung in the air. Mom reached for Dad's hand, and for once, he didn't try to dominate the situation. He just held on, like a drowning man clutching a lifeline. The program has 3 more weeks, Dr. Marcus reminded them. Your progress so far is promising, but these next weeks are crucial. Are you committed to continuing? Mom nodded immediately. Dad took longer, staring at the floor. I didn't want the recording studio equipment, he finally said. What? I wasn't sure I'd heard correctly. I was scared, he continued. You were so young, but already so much more successful than me. Taking your money, it was control, power. I knew I was failing as a father, so I made sure you couldn't succeed without me. He looked up, eyes wet. I'm sorry, Bailey. God, I'm so sorry. The room spun slightly. In 32 years, I'd never heard my father apologize. Not once. That's a start, Dr. Marcus said gently. We'll explore that more tomorrow. Session's over for today. As we filed out, Mom tried to hug me. I stepped back. Not yet, I said. Words are good, but we need to see actions. She nodded, understanding for once. 3 more weeks, Dad said, sounding exhausted. Then what? Then you graduate to the next phase, I replied, if you've earned it. And if we haven't? Then you leave, for good this time. They walked back to their quarters, shoulders bent but not broken. Hadley, Chloe, and I watched them go. Did that really just happen? Chloe asked. Did Dad actually apologize? Progress, Hadley mused. Small steps. I felt lighter somehow, like a weight I'd carried for decades was starting to lift. They're finally doing the work. Think it'll last? Chloe asked. I watched my parents disappear into their quarters, no longer the larger-than-life figures of my childhood, but just 2 flawed people trying to change. That's up to them, I said. For once, their future is entirely in their own hands. Welcome to graduation day, I announced to the gathered crowd at the retreat's main hall. Today we celebrate 2 of our most challenging and most transformed participants. My parents sat in the front row, looking nothing like the people who'd arrived 5 weeks ago. Dad wore a simple button-down shirt instead of his usual flashy attire. Mom's face showed her actual age, but somehow she looked more beautiful, without the layers of makeup and pretense. As part of our program completion, I continued, each graduate must demonstrate their progress through actions, not just words. Hadley stepped forward with 2 envelopes. Your final test, She handed them to our parents. Dad opened his first. His hands shook as he read aloud. Your first Social Security checks have arrived. Mom opened hers. And your first pension payments. The question is, I said, what will you do with them? They looked at each other, then Dad stood up. We've already decided. He pulled out a checkbook, not the fancy leather-bound kind he used to flash around, but a simple bank issue. This check represents our first payment, paying back what we took from Bailey. He handed it to me. The amount was small, tiny compared to what they'd taken over the years, but it was something they'd never done before. Give instead of take. Mom stood next to him. We've also decided to continue the program, voluntarily. We're moving to the Arizona retreat location to work as peer counselors for other families. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the audience. This wasn't part of the original plan. You're moving away? Chloe asked. We need to, Dad replied. We need to stand on our own feet, build our own lives. No more depending on our children to save us. Besides, Mom added, the Arizona location needs people who understand the program from the inside. Who better than its first graduates? Valeria stepped forward. I've already approved their positions. Part-time work, continued therapy, and most importantly, they'll be paying their own way. I studied my parents' faces, looking for any sign of their old manipulation. Instead, I saw something new. Determination, humility, and a hint of pride. The earned kind, not the false bravado of before. There's more, Dad said. He handed each of us daughters an envelope. Open them. Inside mine was a handwritten letter. As I read, tears blurred my vision. Dear Bailey, it began. I always thought being a father meant being in charge, being important. I was wrong. You taught me what real strength looks like. It looks like a 12-year-old girl working paper routes to feed her sisters. It looks like a teenager sacrificing college to support her family. It looks like a woman strong enough to save her parents from themselves. I couldn't read more. Hadley was crying too, clutching her letter. Chloe had already launched herself at Mom in a hug. We can't undo the past, Dad said, his voice rough. But we can do better from here on out. No more taking, no more running, no more expecting you to fix our messes. We're not asking for forgiveness, Mom added. We're asking for a chance to earn back our place in your lives, on your terms. I looked at my sisters, then at Dwayne, who nodded encouragingly. The Arizona retreat needs a new managing director, I said finally. I'll be flying out monthly for inspections. We'd like that, Mom smiled. As long as we're clear, we work for the retreat, not the other way around. And holidays? Chloe asked. We'll come to you, Dad said firmly. After we've saved up for the trips ourselves. The ceremony concluded with them receiving their program completion certificates. As people mingled afterward, Dwayne pulled me aside. You did it, he said. You actually changed them. They changed themselves, I corrected. We just showed them how. Across the room, I watched my parents talking with Valeria about their new positions. They looked smaller somehow, less overwhelming. The monsters of my childhood had become just people, flawed, struggling, but finally trying to be better. Bailey? Dad approached cautiously. Your mother and I are heading out early tomorrow. Would you have dinner with us tonight? Just dinner, he added quickly. No asking for anything, no old patterns, just family. I looked at my sisters, who nodded encouragingly. Dinner, I agreed. But I'm choosing the restaurant, and you're both ordering from the regular menu, not the most expensive items. Dad laughed. A real laugh, not his old performative one. Deal. We've learned our lesson about living beyond our means. Besides, Mom added, the program taught us to appreciate simpler things. As we headed to dinner, I realized something. The weight I'd carried my whole life, the responsibility, the resentment, the pain. It wasn't gone, but it was lighter. My parents weren't fixed, but they were finally on their own path. And I was free to walk mine.